Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Talking Acquisition. This is the weekly high-energy, informative, and slightly opinionated view on all things acquisition, procurement, and government contracting related. This is the place where the contracting community, the acquisition community, and our industry partners get together to talk, listen, and learn from each other. My name is William Randolph. I'm your host, and I'd like to introduce my co-host, my partner, my colleague, my partner, my friend, Soraya Carrera. Hello, Soraya. How you doing?
Hello, Will. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a long week, but we're doing okay.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm a little probably low energy today compared to what I normally am. But then again, once we get going, you know what happens.
No telling.
All right. Let's kick it off with my famous disclaimer here. Our podcast shares information and views on a variety of topics that impact the federal acquisition community. Our goal is to provide thought leadership and perspective, not to criticize, judge, or render political opinions, although we do have a few of those. We provide this free service because we are former federal acquisition professionals and leaders. We believe that the creativity, innovation, and effectiveness of our community is unleashed when we share knowledge, information, and learning. We hope you enjoy our podcast, and we welcome the views and comments of our colleagues across the private and public sectors. So, Will, I think today's topic is as a result of some comments that we received from some of our colleagues out there who've been watching our podcast.
Yeah, we had a couple of episodes ago where we talked about managing up, and it had, I think it resonated with a few people. The idea of managing, that activity of managing up. And what came to me after that is, maybe we should talk about the leading, the things that same individual that has to manage up, what they have to do to kind of lead down that organization, the senior leader's view in contracting organizations, in acquisition organizations, and all the things that we're responsible for thinking about, and all the balls that we have to juggle, okay, to make it happen. So I want to talk about that senior leader view, and as someone that has been to the pinnacle of a departmental contracting procurement function, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what's required to be an effective leader of a acquisition of contracts organization, line of business, or function inside a department.
So thank you. I think that's a great topic, and I think it's good to talk about leadership, especially in the acquisition profession, because I do think leadership varies by profession. You know, certain things have to be emphasized more than others, depending, on kind of where you are. In federal government, I think is a little bit different than industry because our motivating factors are a little bit different. But I always start with the premise of passion. I think leaders have to be compelling and passionate about what they do. That's how you manage effectively your team. If your team feels your energy, your passion, your belief in what you're doing, they're going to join you. They really are. And so when I use that word passion, that's what I'm talking about, but that respect for the mission, that desire to want to make and build a great organization, that desire to deliver, and that desire to support your team, right? So when I use that word passion, I'm talking about all those things. But I also think that part of that leadership phenomenon, see, I told you I can't talk. Along with that passion has to be that ability to inspire. So that's why I think passion is important, because nobody's inspired by someone who says, "Hey, let's go charge that mountain." Right? That wasn't passion. When someone says, "Hey guys, we got a job to do. Let's go get this thing done," and you rev up that team, that's the job of leader: inspiration and motivation. And so I think our leaders, to do that, to be inspiring and motivating, you have to understand the work that your team does. You have to know it. I think that when you're running an operation as large as being a senior procurement executive or head of contracting, you have to understand what it takes to do the contracting. Right. That's why I subscribe to that notion that anybody can run the team. I really think you have to come from that world, and you have to understand all the puts and takes in that world. What are all the high moments and all the low moments in that world? What's easy, what's hard, what does it take, what does it mean, right? Doesn't mean you have to be the best at it. I will say that, I've seen some people who were not so great contracting officers be highly effective leaders. Yeah. And I've seen some great contracting people, great procurement analysts, contracting people stunk. Why would I?
Yeah,
Whoa, you need to go back to time, man.
yeah,
But and so I think that's extremely important though, but you have to have knowledge and understanding and appreciation for what
yeah,
that team does. And if you're not really good at it, I suggest some real good reverse mentoring. Get out there and talk to your team and understand what they do, how they do it, why they do it, and get into their head because that's what's going to make you effective. And then the final thing that I'm going to say is that you got to be a communicator. You can't hide behind your desk or the screen or the office. Now we don't have offices, we have screens, but you can't hide. You got to be out there. You got to be out there talking to the team, pumping them up, helping them do the job. They have to know that you're there for them,
sure.
whether in the good and in the bad, right?
Yeah.
So it's about talking to them on a regular basis and addressing the problems and issues that face the day. That to me is what effective leader is about. And all of those things, I always try to bring, I come back to that word of passion, right? Because if you have passion and you demonstrate passion, all those other things are probably a part of your ego. So, I can go down the whole list of all the traits of leadership, communication, consistency, charisma, character, courage, one of my favorite words when I talk about leaders, because I'm sure a few that didn't have it.
Got it. So when I think about it, when I think about the times that I've been in at the tops of organizations and had the responsibility, there's one big word that comes to mind, or one word that comes to mind, and it's got a lot in it. And I call it, the word that I use is stewardship. It's like we really have a stewardship responsibility. Now that stewardship is broken up into a couple pieces. We have stewardship of taxpayer dollar and trust. That's part of, in our line of business, that's part of the deal. That's what you sign up for, is to be a good steward of the taxpayers' dollar and their trust, to bring goodwill to the table. That's what we interact with, is in goodwill, in good solutions. I think stewardship is also from the organization, that the organization, I've had a couple of folks that are interested in being senior executive service members, and they come and ask me, what's the secret? What's the secret? And I was like, look, okay, organizations are looking for stewards of their people, of their time, and their budgets. Okay, when you think about it, it's all the things. Now, in the time, we're doing the mission, okay, but in the mission, in order to do the mission, it's the time to do the mission, it's the people to do the mission, and then the ancillary resources, which often looks like budgets and capital. But we're managing all those things in execution of the mission. So to be a good steward of those activities and those assets, if you will, you gotta be thinking about all of them at the same time, juggling them, and then prioritizing them as necessary. Sometimes we hope the people come first all the time. Sometimes I've seen the mission, depending on the mission, it's like, I'm sorry, guys, we got to go get this thing done. I know we said X, Y, and Z, but we got to go do this in the short term. And then sometimes the people trump, and then sometimes the time trumps. It's like, okay, September 30th at 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock, the time trumps. So I think stewardship as a model to think about all the stuff that's in that pyramid, is at least a way for me to frame it in a way that's like, I understand that there's things we have to do, and we have to be stewards over all these activities and these responsibilities.
So I agree with you. Stewardship is extremely important. I would just argue that stewardship is an inherent part of being a leader. In other words, to me, it's inherent to any profession you're in, whether you're the CIO, the CPO, the CFO, whatever CXO denomination they give you, or whatever senior executive level job, you better have good stewardship, especially in federal government. You better know how to manage a budget. You better know how to manage people resources, right? And you better understand technology and how it's going to impact your organization. And I would also add, and you better understand how you build I'm going to use, SES language, building coalitions. How do you build that infrastructure around you, those partnerships around you that enable you to be a good stewardship? So I would argue that, stewardship is critically important to any leadership role, extremely important in our profession, where very typically you are not overstaffed, You rarely have the budget that you originally asked for. You usually are saddled with fairly crappy systems because somebody tries to decide for you or they try to undercut you on systems. And I say that after 40 years of serving in government, working in a multitude of procurement offices, even in the very best ones that I worked at, you're never 100% staff. You never really get the best systems in the market. You're not the priority. You're not, by the way, in the CXO suite in general,
Fair enough. Yeah.
Really the priority. Operations is always going to be the priority. And unfortunately, when budgets are laid out, I don't know that people always think about that what I call the backbone of an organization, which is management. But going back, not trying to say that stewardship wasn't important, but I think that in procurement, especially in the business where I'm gonna say acquisition, let me not say procurement, acquisition. Let's talk the whole life cycle. I think it's extremely important to have those soft skills, what I call the soft skills, when you get to that executive leadership role. If you don't know how to communicate, if you don't have some level of charisma, I don't think everybody has to be charismatic. I've met a few not so charismatic leaders in my lifetime.
Right. But effective.
If you don't have those essential skills of communication, collaboration, of being able to inspire and motivate and bring out the very best in people, and also having that compassion and that empathy to deal with the real world situations you're going to deal with, you're going to fail. And in our business, you're really going to fail, because think about what the issues are that we come up with. Think about it. First, you never have a budget, never on time. Okay, I'm sorry, that's exaggeration. 98% of the time. Okay, because I don't want to say, right? But you don't usually have a budget on time, and so you're dealing with continuing resolutions, which creates workload. It creates workload for your staff, creates workload for the program. You're dealing also with a business process that is often being hammered and modified and judged and criticized and elongated by the requirements that are imposed on it that you don't control, but that you have to abide by, stewardship, right? So what happens is you have the luxurious job of having to try to explain to your customer why this is now going to take longer, or why we have to do this, or why we have to follow these extra steps, right? And then you're also dealing with whatever surprise comes along from a mission perspective, right? You and I came from the DHS world. We had a lot of surprises over the last few years. 20 years existence, 20 years, right? In our 19 year existence, we've had a ton of surprises. And they will continue because the world is changing and the environment around us changing. So that's why I think those soft skills are essential at that level. And I think when you're in the acquisition profession, if you lack them, they tend to be a little bit more noticeable. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not true. But I think that when you lack those skills in the acquisition profession, they become abundantly obvious. And how they become abundantly obvious is how the staff reacts to you, meaning, are they there with you? I've always said, it doesn't matter if everybody thinks you're a great leader. If your team doesn't think you're a great leader, not a great leader. I don't care. I don't have any awards. I praise you from above. If your team doesn't want to march behind you, man, you're not a great leader. Go home. Go home and duck. Right? And so when I think about what causes people to want to follow you, it is those things. It's that commitment, that understanding, how well you support them, how well you care for them, right? How well you develop them and train them and fight for them. And it is a fight. And they got to know that you're in that fight. So those soft skills, I think, are just essential in the acquisition workforce. And more so as people keep imposing on us. I mean, I'm like reading President's Management Agenda, and you read the budgets, and you read everything that's coming out. It's just
piling on. I agree. I wholeheartedly agree about the soft skills. And this is the reason why I think they're so important. In addition to the ones you identified, is that our job is built on stakeholder engagement, building allies, building partnerships, and having coalitions. There's nothing we can do alone. I don't think there's anything we can do alone. whenever there's a big problem, yes, we ultimately touch the money that's going out the door, but it's never a one line of business activity. It's not like finance. Like they chew the money, they eat the money, they hand it out, they bring it back, but they're somewhat in control of their own destiny. In my opinion, we are, as a service, that back office function, we are in service of others. We do our magic in service of others. So we have to have the coalition with us. We have to have allies. So that's why I think the soft skills are so important, because the half of the job is building the partnerships, doing the stakeholder engagement, prepping the battlefield well before the battle,
Right,
and that's the activity.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think more so today than even when I was coming up. I mean, I felt it when I became a leader, and I think I'm seeing this more and more, that even the CFOs, the CIOs, and those guys are figuring out, can't do this alone.
Can't do it alone.
All of us have to have these partnerships, right? It just varies, right, by degrees of who reaches out to who. But I think in procurement, you're 100% correct. We cannot do it without the alliances. We can't do it without, engaging with not only our counterparts in that CXO suite and their customers, but also even with the oversight bodies. If you're not having some conversations with the oversight bodies, you're probably going to get your.
Yeah, I agree. The first job I had at DHS was the GAO oversight job. I did audits. I had the goggles.
We loved you. We were all, who's this new guy?
And as an operational contracts guy that loved to have fingers in the deals, it was the job. Let's say it this way, it was the job I loved the least in my career, because that just wasn't who I always felt like it was bayoneting the dead. It's like they're already dead. Why are we going back and looking at this stuff? But I understood the purpose. Okay, and your first SES job picks you. You don't pick it. So, but I understood the role of that relationship, and that was truly relationship work. The deals were done. Right. When you think about everything that we touched was over. Okay, right. It was over. So the forensics, going back and doing the forensics on those deals, there was lessons learning to occur. There was an iterative learning, some learning to be mined out of there, some data to be mined out, and some learning to occur. But it was all relationship work with GAO, making sure that they understood we were attentive and we were listening, and that we cared about them, even though it was questionable sometimes whether they knew what they were looking for or not. It's like, if they knew what they were looking for, they would have found it, but they didn't know. So we rolled the dice and allowed them to, we agree with your findings, and we moved on, because we know, like, if you lift that curtain, there's something else under there. So I think relationships.
Yeah. So you and I are going to write a book, and we're going to call it Bayoneting the Dead. Bayoneting the Dead. I just love that phrase. That's very good. For acquisitions, I think that's a great topic. No, all kidding aside, but it is about that engagement. And I think as we progress, right, as the requirement becomes more and more that we've got to do it faster, we got to do it better, we got to find ways to speed up the process, get the right technologies in, get the right, buy the right stuff at the right time and get it delivered more timely, faster, because everybody's like faster, faster, faster. So everybody says faster, 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 but nobody's looking at, oh yeah, but let's impose more and more and more, right? And let's give you less and less and less to do it with, because they that's what's going on.
Absolutely.
But I think as that is happening more and more and more, I think the executive has to be fast on their feet. They got to be clever. They got to be resourceful. Yep. They got to be willing to be innovative themselves, let alone empowering their people to be innovative, to bring smart ideas to the table. And they have to be risk managers. They have to understand to deal with this environment that we're in, to buy down some of this risk, as my friend Luke McCormick used to say. That means we got to take some risks.
Yeah.
Right? You got to pick up some risks. You're going to have to do it. You cannot do this job and build the perfect procurement. You're going to build one that's good, that's consistent with what you need. And then, hopefully you will get through it. And sometimes you're going to get burned, sometimes you're not. And what the good leader knows is that, did I get burned for a valid reason? I did something wrong, or we did something wrong, or we didn't, dot the I's, cross the T's properly, or did we get burned because we just got outdone?
Right.
It happens.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. It happens. Yeah.
Would have come along with a better argument than you, and they won the argument. Tomorrow,
okay. Right.
That argument. Let me bayoneting the dead. I'm gonna use that one.
So Soraya, I think there's another facet that I'd like to think about, that I'd like to just put on the table when it's talking about the people also. I think there's two roles for the people, and maybe three, but two and a half. I think the first role is to be the head cheerleader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I truly believe, as the leader of the organization, you have to put yourself in a position to be the head cheerleader, and then grab the pom-poms. You have to be head cheerleader for your organization. Exactly. The second one is, I think you need to be the chief roadblock remover too. Okay. I think a significant part of the job is getting stuff out of the way so your folks can work their magic. Okay. Hiring the best people, putting the best people, getting them coached up, ready to go, having them be empowered. And then when stumbling blocks come for them, it's our job to get out front, right, and get them out of the way. Okay. And then the third piece is, I think this is why I call it the half, is like to be a good role model and mentor for the organization, to be a good avatar that they can look at you as an individual and say, oh, I will follow that person. That individual has my best interest in heart. They show up well, they communicate well, they represent us well to the rest of the organization. So some of that is a kind of, it's individualistic, but I do believe people want to follow people that are followable. Okay, so I really think there is something about the presence of the leader that almost half the job is just showing up and looking the part. So I think there's some value to that.
So glad you said that, because even though you listed it as third and you said kind of half, I was thinking, no, to me, that's the number one. The number one is to be that role model, to be that person that people want to follow, to exude that confidence, that capability, that person that you feel you can trust and believe in, that they're going to get you there, right? That they're going to take care of the organization, and they're going to take care of you as individuals and enable you to do your job. And then comes, the cheerleader, the roadblocker. I instead of block, yes, I think in blocking, I agree with you. We're there to block, and I like to say block and tackle, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you got to get the uglies out of the way.
Yeah.
And it's job to take care of ugly,
to
right?
do those. Yeah.
But I also think we are also the people that have to be the foreseers. I think we have to be able to see the future. We have to see the path, and we have to define the path. We have to say, look, there's a path there, there's a path there, there's a path there. And here are the paths that we can go on. Doesn't mean you got to pick the path, but you got to see it. And you got to be able to see a year out, 2 years, and even 3 years out. You have to have that vision.
I love that.
If the leader doesn't have that vision, if we're not the foreseer, I used to call it the crystal ball, and I had a little crystal ball on my desk. It was given to me by one of my former CIOs. I had a little crystal ball because I used to always tell them, if I had a crystal ball, I'd tell you how this one's going to work out. Anyway, but I liked having that little crystal ball because I used to say, that's my job. It is my job to look into the future. It is my job to help you see. It's my job to help you envision that future, whether it's the future of the project, the future of the organization, or even the future of you as an individual in my organization and how you can develop. When you think of yourself in that way, you start to really get engaged, is the word I guess I'll use, with the entire organization. When you can lay out that path and see that roadmap that you want to take the organization. I always loved it when people said, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And where do you see the organization in 5 years? Because I think that's an extremely important part of leadership. But I definitely think being that role model, people have to trust you. They have to believe in you. And hopefully if they trust you and believe in you, then they're going to want to be.
They want to follow. Yeah.
Or follow you.
Yeah, good stuff. So Soraya, I've got one more facet, and I think this taps onto our workforce conversation that I know we're going to have about workforce. But I always thought, as I was growing up in the community and then becoming responsible for the management of contracting shops, I always thought that we had a unique challenge that I don't think many other lines of business have, and that is our entrance into our community aren't grown ahead of time. Okay, so you think about lawyers, when they go recruit new lawyers, they're already lawyers. They just have to turn them into or point them toward the business, the line of activity that they are going to be practicing their law on. Financial managers, they tend to have finance, maybe even accountants. So they go find accountants and then bring them, they're already accountants. What I have noticed in our career field, because I don't think there are many people that grow up saying they want to be a contracting officer.
You didn't do that when you were a little kid?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We have to find individuals that have the raw materials we're looking for, and we turn them into 1102s, contract specialists, contracting officers. I think that's my opinion. So I'm willing to be challenged.
And yet we ask them to manage billions of dollars.
Yes.
Well, so I've long held that this profession is not well understood. It is not adequately defined. I mean, I think people have done a good job of
right. Yeah.
You know, I think of organizations like NCMA and who's the other one? NIG. Is it NIGP? I think.
National, yes, at the state and local
organizations out there. So I do think that there are organizations that really pushed hard and worked hard to define it. But I agree with you. Go to a college. There aren't too many colleges that talk about building the acquisition profession, right? They have a business discipline, and within that, you can take certain contracting courses and that kind of stuff. But nobody says, I am going to build an acquisition professional that could work in industry or government or whatever, right?
Yep.
In fact, and even in industry, sometimes I would argue that the term procurement really means something totally different than it does in government.
In government,
that's a purchasing function. That's a purchasing function, right?
Sure.
In government, we use that to encompass contracting.
Yeah, it's a whole body.
I agree with you. I've long held that, and when we talk about workforce, that I'm passionate about this. When we were going out, I was constantly saying we got to build that pipeline at the college level, right? Mm-hmm. At the college level, even in the high school level, it's not exciting to say I want to be a contracting, right?
But it's an amazing career field.
But it is an amazing, and I think when you say, I want to be an acquisition professional, I want to be that person who is responsible for managing those tax dollars and ensure we get the buy right, that we buy the right things and get them delivered on time, best prices imaginable to support whatever the mission is. Whichever mission, because all of these agencies have missions. I think it is extremely important. And I think building that acquisition profession and getting to that clear definition of what it is. And you're right, you're very right. I don't know that I would say that, you didn't say effectively. Okay, so we built lawyers and I'll correct myself. But no, you're right. There are professions that you're prepping them, right? You're prepping them through high school, through college, et cetera. And then you take them and you certify them and put them in their job. We pick you up with those essential skills. Then we throw some training at you and then certify you.
Yeah.
This is why everybody's revisiting the whole certification thing, right?
Yeah, it's just a different model. And again, as a leader, that's something you have to think about. Your pipeline of new entrants into your organization. And I think DHS did a very good job from an intern management perspective, and it was informed. I like to think it was probably informed by some of the intern programs that may have been, in existence before DHS. Because
there was no secret that when we were, because I was there when we built the APCP program. When we built that program, the folks that worked on that, they went out and looked at all the other models and said, what's the best of each? And how do we incorporate it? here. And they've continually refined it. It's one of the things that I admire about what we've been able to do, or what we had been able to do with the APCP program, where it was continually refined to try to improve it, right? To try to make it better and make that experience better for the intern, make them feel truly, yeah, you're an intern, but you're really a contracting professional.
Yeah,
When
agreed.
the moment you walk through that door, you become that contracting professional.
Yeah.
Kind of like what we do with the attorneys and the accountants and others, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's a great program. We've done a really good job. I think some of the additions we made to the program, where we started to go into the colleges, or we started to go over to we worked in partnership with the VA to get some of those veterans that are coming back, who are looking now for a career. They're coming out of service and they're looking for a career. Well, why not bring them into this career field? Not everyone will be suited for it, but some of them will.
Some of
Right?
them will. Yeah.
And we should.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think you're right. Leaders have to think about that. I will tell you, when people used to ask me what kept me up at night, there were two things that always kept me up at night. How do I continue to motivate and inspire the staff to do the job and do it better every day? How do I inspire and motivate them to be innovative, be creative, and find that better way of delivering on that mission? And then the second thing that kept me up is, how do I get more folks in to be a part of that solution? Because I can, motivate and inspire my team till the cows come home, and they'll do a great job. But at some point, they're going to burn out if they don't see anybody around them doing the same thing.
Yeah.
They don't see their own, program officials or CIOs, et cetera, trying to be the same. Then they're going to burn out. And so that's one of the things that I think is really hard from a leadership standpoint, when you're like banging that drum and the people around you aren't banging the same drum.
And bang it back. Yeah, absolutely.
The bang in your head instead of the bang.
Well, it's that time.
Well,
It's that time. This was a
I
very
get
spirited.
and now you can.
So let's not leave without our nuggets. When you think about leading from a senior leader perspective, as we think about those senior leaders or aspiring senior leaders in our community, what's the nugget you have for them?
So the nugget is the philosophy that I have lived by throughout my career as a leader, and that is lead the way you want it to be led. I believe that if you sit down and think about your career journey and who were the great leaders that you worked for, who were the not so great leaders, because you learn a lot from not so great leaders too. If you look at that and you think about what those characteristics were, you will likely be a good leader, because you're going to remember what motivated you, what got your juices flowing, when you felt empowered, invigorated by the job, and you're also going to remember when you were down. So I always said, I want to lead, and I will lead the way I wanted to be led. And that means that I wanted leaders that had courage, that would stand up for me and support me. I wanted leaders who had the right charisma to sell ideas, even the tough ideas. I wanted leaders who understood what my job was and what the obstacles were. I didn't want to have to go in there and explain why something is taking so long. Somebody that could just really see, yeah, you're working your butt off, but this isn't working out for you. So, and I always wanted leaders who had empathy, who, when they looked at you, they always remembered that you were a human being first. Yeah. Because I think sometimes that's easy to forget in the throes of schedules and, deadlines and a lot of fancy and lofty strategies and plans and words that, at the end of the day, this is the people business. Chip Fulgham, who we had on the show, used to say, we're in the people business.
Yeah, that's true.
We're in the business.
Yeah. So my nugget is right along with that. And it's pretty simple. Take care of the people will take care of everything else. Okay. Take care of the people. And I just believe if you take care of the people, you honor them, you honor their contributions, and you get in tap with their hopes, dreams, and aspirations. Okay. And if you can align them to the organization's hopes, dreams, aspirations, missions, and goals, it'll all play itself out. So
Yeah.
so take care of the people, and they'll take care of themselves, and they'll take care of the rest of it.
Exactly. No, that's very true. But I always loved when Chip used to say we're in the people business, because it's true. We're in the people business. Really,
Good stuff. All right.
It's just a
Another, absolutely. Another one in the books.
I know, and I always learn from you. Day and night. We're just we have to author a few books jointly.
I would love that. That would be cool.
I think Banging the Dead should be the name of the new 101 textbook.
See how you go too far?
Cut me off.
See how you, if going too far was a picture, this is it right here. Going too far.
Hey, that's the name of the book. We're going too far.
All the best.
Pleasure. Thank you.
All right, you take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.